Previously on The Princess Never Knew That Her Heart Could Choose a Servant Over a King. Tun's men have followed Chinyu all the way to Deli's home, and now Deli is back. And now, welcome back to our channel. Today's story continues with The Princess Never Knew That Her Heart Could Choose a Servant Over a King, Part 4. Enjoy. For a moment there was silence. Then ugly laughter broke out from the Apex men. "Well, look who showed up," said the scarred leader, Viper, lowering his rifle slightly. "The ghost himself. Saves us the trouble of finding you." They didn't drop their weapons. They attacked. It wasn't a careful move. It was a pack of 5 large, armed men charging at once. In the safe room, Chinyu gasped. "They're going to kill him." Jide shook his head slowly. "No, they're not." The first man lunged. Deli didn't dodge. He stepped into the attack, grabbed the man's arm and vest, and used his momentum to slam him into the 2 behind him. All 3 went down hard. The 4th man swung his rifle like a bat. Deli ducked under it and drove his elbow into the man's throat. The crunch was awful. The man fell, choking. The 5th Viper raised his gun. But Deli was faster. He kicked up a fallen rifle, caught it in midair, and smashed it into Viper's jaw. The sound of breaking bone was clear even through the speakers. 10 seconds. 5 men down. Deli stood over them, breathing hard but calm, his face set in cold fury. He hadn't even fired a shot. Chinyu stared in shock. She had seen him as the calm planner, the quiet leader, the man who sent her balloons. But this was brutal. Fast. Terrifying. A chill went down her spine. These were the same hands that had held hers, and now they'd crushed men without emotion. The other Apex mercenaries turned on him, and the fight grew fiercer. But the tide had shifted. Deli moved like a storm, predicting, striking, outsmarting. Every move was final. Chinyu's heart pounded. But now it wasn't just fear for him, it was fear of him. She watched him disarm one man and disable him with a quick, deadly cut. Then he looked up at a camera, and his eyes were empty. For a second, she didn't see the man she loved. She saw the director. The killer. He's, she stammered. Jide glanced at her. "He's ending it, Chinyu. They came to our home. They hurt our people. There's no talking to men like that." But her fear didn't fade. The final image was a Viper, staggering up and pulling a pistol. Deli turned, moved faster than sight, twisted the man's wrist, snap, and took the gun. He pressed it to Viper's forehead. He didn't shoot. He whispered something too low for the mics to catch, then hit Viper across the head, knocking him out cold. The fight was over. The rest of Apex dropped their weapons. Silence fell again. Deli stood in the wreckage, shoulders heavy with exhaustion. He dropped the gun, scanning the damage. In the safe room, the door slid open. The danger had passed. Chinyu took a step back, eyes wide. As Deli walked toward the mansion, he looked up at the camera. His face was covered in mud and blood, his eyes still cold from the fight. He was coming for her. And for the first time, Chinyu was afraid of him. The heavy silence in the safe room was broken only by the soft hum of the monitors and the fast beating of Chinyu's heart. On the screens, Deli moved with the smooth, deadly grace of a hunter through the aftermath, heading straight for the mansion. He didn't stop to check on the hurt people. Teams were already doing that quickly. He didn't stop to look at the damage. His focus was total, like something guiding him straight to her. Chinyu took a step back without thinking, pressing herself against the cold wall of the bunker. The picture of him moving through the chaos, a storm of careful violence, burned in her mind. The man walking toward her now wasn't the one who had laughed with her in the garden. This was the director, the giant, and she suddenly knew, deep in her bones, that she was trapped in a small room with his coming, frightening presence. The heavy steel door slid open. Deli stood in the doorway, filling it completely. He was covered in swamp mud, sweat, and other darker stains. The sharp, metallic smell of blood and gunpowder clung to him, cutting through the clean air of the safe room. His eyes, those brown eyes that had once held such quiet kindness, were now hard and sharp, scanning the room before they stopped on her. Then something happened that Chinyu didn't expect at all. Jide, who had been leaning against a console a moment before, suddenly stood straight. His usual playful look disappeared, replaced by a soldier's firm posture. Sei, already standing stiffly, stood even straighter, his shoulders pulled back. But the biggest surprise was Bimbo. Chinyu hadn't even noticed her come in, but there she was, standing a little apart, her graceful posture matching her son's. Her face, usually warm and smiling, was now serious and respectful. At the same time, all three of them raised their hands in a sharp, formal military salute. "Welcome back, Director," Sei said, his deep voice full of respect. The sight made Chinyu's breath catch. His mother, saluting him. It showed a level of respect and order that was more frightening than any show of strength. It confirmed what she had feared. This wasn't just her boyfriend coming home. This was a leader returning to his command. And the people who loved him most accepted that power, without question. Deli's eyes moved to his family for just a moment, giving a small nod. Then his gaze returned to Chinyu, holding her in place. He didn't speak to them. He didn't thank or dismiss them. He just started walking toward her, his boots leaving faint, dirty marks on the clean floor. Jide, Sei, and Bimbo held their salute until he passed them, then lowered their hands and quietly walked out of the safe room. The door closed behind them, leaving her alone with him. He stopped a few feet away, close enough for her to see the tired lines on his face and the wild look still in his eyes. He was studying her, and she knew he could see her fear clearly. "Chinyu," he said, his voice rough and tired from shouting orders and fighting through the swamp. She couldn't speak. She just stared, her back pressed against the wall. He saw it. Of course he did. His eyes narrowed a little, and the hardness in them softened slightly, replaced by something else, a mix of pain and understanding. "You're scared," he said quietly. It wasn't an accusation, just a simple, tired truth. She nodded stiffly, unable to speak. "Of you. I'm scared of you," she wanted to say, but couldn't. Deli didn't come closer. He gave her space, his hands open and relaxed at his sides, even though everything about him still showed danger. "Look at me," he said softly. "Really look." Shaking, she forced herself to meet his eyes, to look past the dirt and blood and the scary strength, to find the man she knew. "What you saw out there," he began slowly, "wasn't a man who liked fighting. It wasn't about showing power." He took a deep breath. "It was a man protecting what is his. This compound. My family. My people." He paused, his gaze locked on hers. "You." The word hit her like a blow. "Tun sent those men here to my home, to take you from me. They hurt my people get to you. There's no talking with someone like that. There's no mercy for that." The hardness flashed in his eyes again. "The man you saw out there is the one who makes sure the man I am with you can exist. He is the wall. He is the shield. He is the darkness that keeps the light safe." He took one slow step forward, closing the last bit of space between them. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, showing her everything, the fighter and the man, forever connected. "I will never raise my hand to you in anger. I will never use my strength to scare or control you. The power you're afraid of. Chinyu, it exists for you. It has always existed for you." He slowly raised his hand. He didn't grab hers. He just held it open between them, an offer. A question. The fear was still there, cold in her stomach. But under it, his words were sinking in. The salute from his family. The loyalty of everyone in the compound. It wasn't born from fear of him. It came from respect for the protector who carried the heavy burden of violence so they didn't have to. He was the storm wall, and she was the safe harbor. Carefully, still trembling, she lifted her hand and placed it in his. His fingers closed gently around hers, firm but kind. The touch was electric, part fear, part relief, and something deeper, a strong, deep understanding. He softly pulled her away from the wall and into his arms. He didn't crush her. He just held her, his chin resting on her head, his body a warm, solid barrier against the world. She could still smell blood and battle, but underneath was his familiar scent of sandalwood and soap. The last of her tension slipped away, and she relaxed into him, her arms wrapping around his waist, holding on like he was the only solid thing left. The fear didn't disappear, but it changed. It wasn't fear of him anymore, but a deep, humbling understanding of what he would do for her. She was safe, not despite the killer who held her, but because of him. The feeling in the Adiomi mansion that evening was very different. The lively energy that usually filled the dining room was gone, replaced by quiet, almost respectful calm. Dinner was simple, hot pepper soup and soft bread, but the usual joking between Jide and Sei was missing. Even Bimbo spoke softly, her eyes often turning to her son with both pride and worry. Deli sat at the head of the table, clean but looking carved from stone. He looked exhausted, and there was a new, serious stillness in his eyes. He ate slowly, his thoughts far away, lost in what he had just done. No one asked questions. Not Jide, not Sei, not even Bimbo. They all knew to give him space. Chinyu watched quietly. This was a side of his world she hadn't seen before, the silent understanding of the cost of his work. But worry for her own kingdom burned in her chest. Her father had sent him. This involved Yubium. She took a sip of water, gathering her courage. Her voice sounded too loud in the quiet room. Deli. Everyone stopped moving. Jide froze, a piece of bread halfway to his mouth. Sei looked at her quickly, warning her silently. Bimbo looked troubled. Deli slowly lifted his eyes from his bowl, focusing on her. His attention felt heavy, almost physical. He didn't look angry, just alert. Yes, Chinyu. She swallowed. Your mission. For my father. The Delta Vipers, is it over? The air grew heavier. Jide looked down. Sei studied the tablecloth. Deli put his spoon down carefully. He looked at her closely, and she saw the ghost of what he'd been through in his eyes. Yes, he said simply. It's over. He paused, choosing his words carefully. We found their main camp. Scorpion was there. We gave them the offer I told your father about, a chance for his men to surrender and join a rehab and jobs program. Chinyu leaned forward, hopeful. And... He laughed, Deli said, his voice flat. He said kings don't talk with rats. He said he'd burn Yubium to the ground before bowing to a servant of the throne. Cold dread filled Chinyu's stomach. So I showed him he was wrong, Deli went on, calm but cold. I showed him that a king's servant can be more dangerous than the king himself. We broke his group apart in less than an hour. We caught his top men. We took their weapons. He took a slow breath, his eyes still on hers. When it was just him left, trapped, I gave him one last chance. For the sake of his men. What happened? Chinyu whispered. He chose his pride over his people, Deli said. He reached for a weapon. He didn't succeed. The finality in those words hung in the air. No extra detail. No story. Just fact. Scorpion was dead. The danger was gone. The kingdom was safe. Chinyu stared at him, the man who had calmly described taking down an entire rebel group. He had done what her father's army and Prince Tun's foreign fighters couldn't. He had saved her kingdom. But the cost of that victory sat right in front of her, in his tired eyes and hard face. He had done something terrible and violent, and he had done it for Yubium. For her father. For her. The silence was now heavy with the knowledge of what it had taken. Chinyu had her answer. She understood now that the man she loved lived in a world where peace was often bought with blood. The silence stretched. Jide, Sei, and Bimbo shared a look and quietly stood up. They cleared their plates and left the room, leaving Deli and Chinyu alone. Chinyu stared at the wood of the table, her mind spinning. The image of Scorpion reaching for a weapon and failing played over and over in her head, mixed with the memory of Deli fighting the mercenaries. He solved problems, the final kind. She had nothing to say. Thank you felt wrong. I'm sorry felt useless. So she just sat in the ringing silence, feeling the weight of what he had done, of what he was. Deli pushed back his chair, the sound loud in the quiet. He didn't come to her. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped. The tiredness on him was heavy. Chinyu, he said softly. Look at me. Slowly, she lifted her eyes. The battle light was gone. What was left was deep exhaustion, and something new, a raw honesty she'd never seen. I know what you're thinking, he said. I see it in your eyes. The fear. The question. He took a slow breath. The man who did those things and the man who wants to sit with you in a quiet garden, they are the same. I can't separate them. He opened his hands, palms up, showing they were empty. But you need to understand something. That power, that ability, it's yours to guide. Her breath caught. I'll do anything you ask, he said, his voice low but firm. Anything. If you ask me to leave this life, to walk away from Falcon, I will. If you tell me never to pick up a weapon again, I'll stop forever. My loyalty, my life, my violence, my peace, they're all yours. It was an unbelievable promise. He was giving her control over all of him, without question. His eyes held hers. But you also need to know what that means. If you ask me to protect you, I will. Completely. Without hesitation. He paused. That includes from Prince Tund. The name made her shiver. Not from fear of the fight, but from the dark truth of what he meant. Deli wasn't just offering to protect her. He was offering to avenge her. He sent armed men into my home to take you, Deli said, and anger flickered in his eyes. He saw you as something to be taken back. That's something I cannot forgive. What do you want me to do, Chinyu? The question hung between them, huge and frightening. He was giving her the choice to decide what came next. In that moment, surrounded by the shadow of his violence and the depth of his devotion, Chinyu understood the real crown he was offering her. It wasn't made only of love, but also of steel and shadow. And she had never been more afraid or more sure in her life. The silence after his question was complete. Chinyu felt the weight of kingdoms, of futures, of life and death, resting on her next words. He was offering her the power to decide the fate of a prince, to control or release the great force that was him. The image of Tund, loud and spoiled but in the end pitiful, flashed in her mind. She didn't want his blood on her hands or on Delhi's. She found her voice. It was small but steady. "Whatever you do, just be careful." She met his tired, intense eyes. "Don't let Tund's men hurt you." For a moment, there was no reaction. Then a sound came from Delhi's lips that she had never heard before. It started as a low, surprised rumble in his chest and burst into full, deep laughter. It wasn't a mean laugh or a mocking one. It was the laugh of a man who had just heard the strangest and most wonderful thing. It was the laugh of pure relief. He leaned back in his chair, the tension of the past hour falling away, his shoulders shaking. He laughed until tears shone in his eyes. Chinyu stared, first confused, then slightly annoyed. What's so funny?" He wiped his eyes, his laughter fading into warm chuckles. "Oh, Malika NWA," he said softly, his voice full of love. "You are perfect." He shook his head, a wide, real smile lighting his tired face. "After everything you just saw, after the helicopters, the soldiers, the story of the swamp, your first and only worry is that I might get hurt." He stood up then and came closer, kneeling before her chair, so their eyes were level. He took both her hands in his grip warm and strong. "Chinyu, look around you," he said, his voice gentle but firm. "This compound, the people here, the system you've only seen a little of, it wasn't made to be careful. It was made to be untouchable. Tund's men." He let out another soft laugh, a puff of air with no anger, only calm confidence. "They are children playing with toy swords outside the walls of a fortress. The only reason they're still alive is because I've chosen for now to be polite." The word polite in his mouth, mixed with the ghost of his laugh, sent a new kind of shiver down her spine. This wasn't the fear she had felt earlier. This was awe. It was the dizzying truth that the man holding her hands lived on a level of power far above the petty fights of princes, and that her concern for his safety was, to him, the sweetest kind of innocence. "Tund paid a group of disgraced, second-rate soldiers everything he had to find you," he said, his thumb moving gently over her hand. "They found you because I allowed the signal to be traced. I wanted to see who was foolish enough to follow. I knew they would come here. I knew it would be a problem I could solve for good." Her eyes widened. You led them here?" "I made the opportunity," he said gently. "They made the choice. And now they've been handled. Their group is gone. As for Tund," he sighed, the laughter fading from his eyes, replaced by cool calm. "He's just a small part of a bigger problem. A fly buzzing around a lion's head. The lion doesn't chase every fly. It only decides when the buzzing is too annoying to ignore." He leaned forward, his forehead gently touching hers. The closeness of it, after everything they just said, was both strange and powerful. "So, my love, you don't have to worry about Tund's men hurting me," he whispered. "The only person in this world who can truly hurt me is you." The truth of it settled over her, warm and heavy like a royal robe. Her fear, her rejection, her hesitation, that was the only weak spot in his otherwise unbreakable armor. His power, his purpose, his strength, all of it now pointed toward her. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. "The question isn't what I'll do to Tund. The question is, what do you want? Do you want him to disappear? To be embarrassed? To lose his money and end up with nothing? Or do you just want him to never bother you again?" He said each choice calmly, like he was listing menu items. "Just say the word. It will be done." In that moment, the last pieces of the world she had known fell away. This wasn't about politics or family power. This was the simple math of real strength. And he was putting that strength in her hands. She thought of Tund, not with hate, but with pity. His pride, his belief that money and title made him powerful, was an illusion. The real power was kneeling in front of her, offering her anything she wanted, just because she had asked him to be careful. She took a deep, shaky breath. "I don't want you to make him disappear," she said. "I just want him to understand. I want him to know that he lost. Not to a king or a prince, but to me." A slow, dark, deeply pleased smile spread across Deli's face. It was both frightening and beautiful. "Now that," he said, his voice low and sure, "I can do." The tension of the moment broke like a snapped wire. Deli stood, still moving with that calm grace, and started clearing the table. The act was so normal after everything they just said that Chinyu could only watch for a moment before getting up to help. The sound of dishes and cutlery was grounding and human in the large, quiet room. As she handed him a stack of bowls, she remembered the training ground and the bold woman with her sharp words. It felt small now, almost silly, compared to the serious things they had just discussed. But it still bothered her a little, a small worry she needed to get rid of. "There's something else," she said, her voice unsure, as she brushed a crumb off the table. "This morning, on the training ground, I met one of your officers, Nancy." Deli took the bowls from her, his brow wrinkled in real confusion. He looked like he was going through a list in his head. "Nancy," he repeated blankly. "What team?" Chinyu blinked. "Okafor." She said she led Delta Team. She was very impressive. She didn't add the rest. She made it clear she thought she belonged here more than I do. Deli's frown deepened. He put the bowls in the sink and turned, leaning on the counter with his arms crossed. "I have a Sergeant Okafor in Delta. A good soldier. But I don't know any Nancy who leads a team." He looked honestly puzzled and a little annoyed, like she'd pointed out a mistake in his perfect system. Then a voice came from the doorway, full of mischief. "I think dear brother," Jide said, leaning against the frame with a huge grin, "she's talking about our HOA. Officer Okoro." Deli's head turned fast toward his brother. "Okoro? Esther Okoro." "The one and only," Jide said, walking into the kitchen. "Though she's been telling everyone to call her Nancy for 6 months now. Thinks it sounds more international." He made air quotes with his fingers, his eyes shining with amusement at the gossip. Deli's change was instant and funny. The serious strategist disappeared, replaced by a man who just found a silly mistake in his code. He rolled his eyes and sighed. "That's who you're worried about? Esther Okoro and her name change game." Chinyu stared, first at Jide's proud grin, then at Deli's completely dismissive look. The tough, intimidating woman who had seemed so powerful in Deli's world had just become a joke. She seemed to think there was something between you," Chinyu said, feeling embarrassed now. Deli laughed shortly with no warmth. "Esther Okoro has been trying to get promoted to team leader for 2 years. She's capable, but she lacks sense. Sending flirty emails to your boss and spreading rumors isn't the way to prove yourself." He said it like he was describing a broken tool. Jide clapped him on the shoulder. "To be fair, bro, you did compliment her after that mission in Kano once." "I complimented the whole team's work," Deli said flatly. She took it personally. It became a problem. I had Sergeant Musa move her to logistics review for a month to get her focused again. He looked at Chinyu, his face softening into gentle amusement. "So that's the big threat? Officer Okoro and her big dreams." The relief that hit Chinyu was so strong it made her legs weak. She started to laugh, a full, real laugh of joy. The fear, the jealousy, the knot in her stomach, it had all been over a woman he saw as a slightly troublesome worker with a funny nickname. Deli watched her laugh, his annoyance melting into a warm smile. He walked over and pulled her into his arms, his chest moving with a small chuckle of his own. "For the record," he murmured into her hair, "the only woman whose goals matter to me is the one brave enough to ask a warlord to be careful." Jide, seeing he'd done his job, gave an exaggerated bow. "And with that, I'll take my leave. Try to keep the empire building and the romance separate, you two. It's confusing for the rest of us." He winked and left down the hall. Alone again, Chinyu looked up at Deli, her heart feeling light and free. The monsters had been named, and they were nothing but shadows and silly, self-important officers. The real power, the strong and beautiful force that was Ayodele Bemiji Adeomi, was holding her in his arms, and he was hers. Completely. The next 2 days had been like a bubble, a strange and peaceful break cut off from the outside world. Chinyu had eaten, slept, trained with Jide's crew, and simply lived inside the safe, powerful world of the Adeomi family. She had purposely stayed away from her phone, a silent, black rectangle that felt like a link to a life she was no longer sure was hers. On the morning of the 3rd day, Bimbo found her reading on a sunny veranda, looking over the pool. In her hands, she held Chinyu's phone. "I thought you might want this back," Bimbo said, her tone calm, but her eyes knowing. "It's been charging. You have a lot of missed calls." A cold knot, both familiar and forgotten, tightened in Chinyu's stomach. She took the phone. It felt heavy and strange. The screen lit up when she touched it, and the notifications poured in, a flood of worry and fear. 127 missed calls. Her father. Chief Umizi. Prince Tund. Unknown numbers. Dozens from each. Dozens of frantic text messages scrolled up the screen. Chief Umizi, Your Highness, your father is beside himself. Please confirm your safety. Chief Umizi, the alliance with Abaddon is close to falling apart. Your presence is needed. Chief Umizi, the king demands you contact him right away. Prince Tund, Chinyu, this nonsense has gone on long enough. Where are you? Prince Tund, my father is furious. Your disappearance is an international problem. Prince Tund, answer your phone. And then, from her father, the Obi, sent just a few hours ago. Father, Chinyu, whatever you are doing, wherever you are, it ends now. You will return to the palace today. This is not a request. It is an order from your king and your father. The punishment for disobedience will be severe. The words international problem and severe punishment swam before her eyes. The bubble, so perfect and safe, broke. The real world, with its duties, its politics, and its angry, powerful men, was crashing back in. She had been hiding in a fortress, but now the world outside was banging on the gates. She looked up at Bimbo, her face pale. They think I've been kidnapped. Bimbo's face stayed calm. Let them think what they want. You are where you chose to be. The question is, what will you choose now? She didn't wait for an answer, turning and leaving Chinyu alone with the buzzing phone. The phone felt like a live bomb. Every instinct, years of training, screamed at her to call her father back, to say sorry, to fix things, to return to her golden cage and play her part. But then she looked out at the compound. She saw two workers jogging past the pool, nodding respectfully at her. She heard Jide's laughter echo from an open window. She felt the memory of Deli's arms around her, his words still clear in her mind. My loyalty, my life, my strength, and my peace, it's all yours to command. Going back meant giving that up. It meant letting her father and Tund take control again. It meant pretending the last few days hadn't happened, that she hadn't learned what real power and love looked like. Her thumb hovered over her father's name. The obedient princess fought with the woman who had seen a new path. Taking a deep, shaking breath, she made her choice. She didn't call her father. She didn't text Tund. Instead, she opened her messages and typed a single note to the only person whose opinion really mattered now. Chinyu, the world is calling. What do I do? She didn't wait long for a reply. It came right away. Deli, ignore them. You're not their princess right now. You're mine. Let them wait. A second message came. Deli, I'm coming to you. We'll face them together. Our way. Chinyu looked down at the phone, at the 127 missed calls, then out at the bright, sunny compound. A slow, bold smile spread across her lips. She placed the phone face down on the table, the non-stop buzzing now just a faint, unimportant noise. She was not going back. Not yet. And when she did, it wouldn't be as a runaway princess, but as a queen returning with her king. The return was not a secret sneaking back through a side door. It was a statement. Deli's favorite way to travel, a sleek, matte black helicopter with no markings, came down from the sky like a hunting bird. It didn't stop at a safe distance. It flew straight into the middle of the Ubium Palace grounds, its strong wind tearing at the neat hedges and sending courtiers and guards running for cover. Inside, Chinyu sat strapped in beside Deli. He wore a simple, perfectly cut black suit, no tie. He looked calm, but his hand rested on hers, firm and reassuring. He wasn't a guard coming back to work. He was a king arriving at another king's home. The helicopter landed on the main lawn, right in the middle of the palace grounds. The roar of the blades broke through the quiet dignity of the palace like thunder. Through the window, Chinyu saw the chaos they had caused. Chief Umizi stood frozen on a balcony, a scroll clutched in his hand, his mouth wide open. Palace guards, holding their guns uncertainly, form a loose, confused circle, but none dared go near the aircraft. And then she saw her father. The Obi stood at the top of the grand staircase, his robes flowing around him, his face dark with furious anger. Beside him, Prince Tund looked pale, his usual proud look replaced by shock and fear. The helicopter door slid open. Deli got out first, turning to offer Chinyu his hand. She took it, stepping onto the grass. She was not dressed in royal clothes, but in the simple, elegant outfit from the compound, a modern woman, not a decorative doll. The sight of her unharmed and standing tall beside the man they had once dismissed as a servant sent a wave of shock through the watching crowd. The whispers were drowned out by the slowing whump 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 of the blades. Deli didn't look at the guards. He didn't greet the stunned chiefs. His eyes stayed on the obi at the top of the stairs. He began to walk, Chinyu's hand resting firmly on his arm, leading her through the parted crowd as if they were only background scenery. It was the boldest show of power any of them had ever seen. A servant landing a military helicopter in the king's garden, and now walking his daughter toward him as if he owned the ground they stood on. They reached the bottom of the staircase. Deli stopped, and his gaze finally turned to Prince Tund, a look so cold and dismissive that Tund actually stepped back. Then Deli looked up at the obi. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice strong and calm, with respect but no submission. "I've brought your daughter back. As you can see, she is safe." The silent meaning hung in the air, louder than the fading sound of the helicopter. She was safe with me. She was not safe here with you. The obi's eyes widened, his fists tightening. The entire palace froze, waiting for the outburst, for the command to have this daring man arrested, locked up, or killed. But the obi said nothing. He only stared, his mind clearly racing, trying to understand what this man, this power, meant, a man who had just changed all the rules of their world with one landing. The princess had returned, but nothing would ever be the same.